Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply. This video is to bring you a closer look at the Kawneer. This is their part number NP1. The NP1 is a relatively new power supply for their motor-driven electric latch retraction devices. So historically, electric latch retraction, or much of the hardware industry, is solenoid driven. There would be a solenoid. It would be a coil with windings, and you would energize that and it would force a piece of metal to move. Works great. Turns out motors are better. They now are not only more robust in terms of the life expectancy, but they use far less power as well. So they're more reliable, far less power, much longer lasting. And Kawneer has phased into motor only on electric latch retraction. The problem with that is there's an untold quantity of solenoid-driven exit devices by Kawneer in the field. It has to be a staggering number. It is early 2018. Pardon me. I only wish. It is early 2020, and at some point in 2019. It became quite clear that there was no more availability of solenoid devices. And just a few months ago, I think I got like one of the last ones that were ever available because a client has a failed solenoid. And while it's unclear to me if there are retrofit kits from third-party folks to make that all work, remove those solenoids and replace them, Kawneer, their upgrade path is a new motor-driven exit device, period. The problem with that is your old power supply is not going to work. It's been tried. Their SP1 is not going to power this device. Even though it has power, it's just speaking the wrong language. The NP1 is only rated at 1.5 amp and will handle 2 devices, so that shows how small the amount of power will be consumed by those exit devices with motor-driven material. But if you have a motor device, and it'll be quite obvious to you when you slide that cover off, you're going to see something that looks like a rectangular item that is primarily black. The point is it's not circular and a gold tone type color. It will be a motor. I have had lots of clients say, oh, my electric latch retraction doesn't work anymore. It's a solenoid problem. Can't get the solenoids. It's not only bad enough to tell them, well, you need an entire new device, but you have to replace that power supply as well, and they're awfully expensive is the problem with that. So this video is going to show you the NP1 for motor-driven devices. It's the new standard. What's nice about it, even though it's dreadfully expensive, is that it does include batteries, and you ought to have a nice mated pair between your device and your power supply, and with that motor it ought to work, for a super long time. And what's really awesome also about the motor material is that it includes batteries, which I'll show you. When the power goes out and you go into backup battery mode, you can expect a really substantial amount of standby time on a couple of 12-volt batteries. Because you're requesting so little power is the bottom line. It's a pretty epic amp hour time, and there's a way to calculate that. You basically, you just have to calculate what your draw is and what your battery is producing, and you'll have a theoretical amp hour standby time. So let's show you the NP1. We'll get started with that. So when you get the unit, it'll come in that box that I had shown. There'll be something loose inside of there, and it's going to be the batteries, which I've removed. A couple of screws on the side, which we will quickly remove here. Just going to put it down so I don't lose the screws. What's also nice about this is the door can literally come off, so that you can set it aside to work on the power supply, but there's very little that goes on here. And the people who manufacture this unit have really put together a simple and straightforward set of installation instructions. So it will certainly swing open, and it won't fall on you at all, okay? But if you were to take that and lift it up, you'll be able to get that door to come off. And we'll just take it off for the sake of not having to have it flap around. Obviously, you can punch that knockout through and toss a cam lock into it. I'm going to bet that you can make a, I'll see what the part number for the cam lock is, and I'll add that, but it's just going to be a cam lock, very short length with a with just a straight short tailpiece on the back. But we'll get the correct item listed for that up with this. So we'll put that aside. Very simple and straightforward. Just the summary is your power is going to come here. Your ground, your neutral, and your load wire. Over here is where your battery backup's going to plug into. Zone 1 and Zone 2, and then your fire alarm input. Okay, so really, really straightforward. Not much to this at all. And the only regret really is that, they're awfully expensive. And I have no control over that, unfortunately. So let's take a look next at the batteries. Okay, I wanted to reach over and grab the batteries. I would not call myself an expert when it comes to low voltage or access control. I would agree that I am reasonably confident with an understanding of how access control and low voltage works. So what you're going to see here is there are two batteries. I had said 12, I may have said 12 volt on the batteries. This is a 24 volt system. It's always 24 volt, and that's because the device is 24 volt. Now, why are these batteries 12 volt? Well, the way I like to explain it is think of your remote and you have 4 AA batteries. Just pick anything that'll take 4 AA batteries. Those are 1.5 volt each. And they are connected inside your remote in such a way that they are like in a line. It's just that there's a battery, negative, positive, negative, positive, negative, positive, negative, positive. So that if you took those 4 batteries and just laid them side by side, they would be in a row, or they would be what's called in series. They're literally connected. 1, then 2, then 3, then 4. When you do that, you have the effect of adding the voltage for every battery. So your remote isn't a 1.5 volt battery, it's a 1.5 volt device. It's a 6 volt device. So it takes 6 volts to run your remote. Therefore, you need 4 1.5 volt batteries. And that's the concept here. You have 2 batteries that are 12 volt. You're going to wire these in series to achieve 24 volt. Okay. Now, in battery wiring in backups, you could leave the reservation a little bit. And what I mean is this. You might notice it says 20 hour on here. Okay, so you're going to get a substantial amount of standby time with this. Well, what if you said, I want theoretically 40 hours? Well, you could take 2 batteries, and rather than in series, you can wire them in parallel. Now, when you wire batteries in parallel, it doesn't double the voltage. It keeps the voltage at the same voltage, but it will double the amp hour. I would imagine that the batteries in an electric car, they are not in series. They're in parallel so that you increase, your amp hour sort of situation is how I would imagine it. I don't know what, that 12 volt, I would imagine. I mean, how many batteries are in an electric car? Lots. They're all not, 0.25 volt batteries. So I would imagine that that's how that works. So 12 volt is what's listed there. You're going to put them in series to come up with 24 volt. And when you put them in series, you maintain the amp hour. So again, in series, the voltage is additive. The amp hours stays the same. In parallel, the voltage stays the same and the amp hours are additive. So you could say to yourself, well, great, I want to have 12 volt and I want to be able to double my amp hour. You'd be able to wire 2 pair of these to achieve that sort of concept. Actually, all you would do is, you would just add more batteries. to the system is what you would end up doing. And to that end, you're going to plug your, this is the battery plug. You're going to put your positive into a positive of one of the two batteries. You're then going to go negative to positive. Okay, and then you're going to run your negative into the last battery is how that will work. Okay, they include that cable to go between the two batteries as well. So if you took another set of batteries and wired that all, you could increase your amp hour time. But I think the logic on 20 amp hour is actually, I'm going to say that might be 10 amp hour. No, probably, no. 20 amp hour. I'm going to stick with 20 amp hour. I'm going to get the official answer on this. I want to be sure that it's the voltage that is doubling, but we're not doubling the amp hour. I'm quite sure that that's the way it is. It's going to be in series. It'll be 12 volt plus 12 volt, 24 volt, but the amp hours will stay the same. I'll contact the manufacturer and confirm that's how that works. And then I will update the extended description. So we have our two batteries. These batteries are quite small. About 3 7/8 or so by 2 inch by about 1 5/8 inches. Okay, two of those. We have our cables that we discussed. Installation instructions are also included. So we're going to switch now to the screen view where we can take a look at the supporting documentation, the installation instructions, and the manufacturer's parts service catalog as well. Okay, so here's the item that we're looking at, and not a lot to see here. Extended description information is down below. NP1 series power supply for use with the MEL, motorized electric latch retraction. This will operate up to 2 devices, or I don't know that I would call them 2 zone, but I think it would be appropriate to call it 2 devices because, perhaps a zone is classified as a pair of doors, and you have 2 pair of doors, like exterior and then vestibule. This would handle 2 devices. So if you were doing a pair of doors and for some reason you had electric latch retraction on both, you'd probably want two power supplies. 1 pair of 12 volt DC batteries are included with the NP1 and the wiring that I showed earlier. That's all included. Now, just some generic images down here of concealed vertical rod exit device. There will be additional images as well. So, service parts, product specifications, wiring diagram, and the installation instructions, which are not listed here yet, but by the time you're seeing this video, they will be here. Let's start with product specifications. We've probably covered most of this already. We have not. So the size I'll go over with you on camera at the end, assuming that I don't forget to do that. Standard with the power supply, and if you want to run this as a fail-secure application, then you do need to have the batteries installed. You don't have to have the batteries installed, and in fact, if you want fail-safe operation, do not install the batteries. So fail-secure means when the power is cut, the power supply would lose its incoming power. However, the batteries would then take over and run until the battery stopped. And as I had indicated earlier, it's rated for 20 amp hour. And we'll talk more about that in a moment. The doors will then stay locked in a power outage. The hope is that power is restored before the batteries fail. You could get exotic and add more batteries to increase your amp hour. It's atypical, but not unheard of. If you were concerned about a 3-day weekend, you would need to investigate into the research to find out how many more batteries you would need, and then probably a spare cabinet for backup batteries. But that would be a set. You would be You know, you might consider different batteries. You might buy 24-volt batteries and put them all in series, or you're going to need to have a series of batteries that are set up in a combination of series and then run those series in parallel so that you're able to increase the amp hour without changing your output voltage of 24 volt, because this is only 24 volt. So we jumped right to here. 120 volt input. It has a 2 amp fuse. The output is 24 volts. Has this temperature range, as you can see. It does have input from the fire panel. So the fire panel is, that input from the fire panel is going to be normally open, which means that in its normal state, without a jumper, the power supply is not going to work. It comes with a jumper automatically. If you're going to not have a fire panel connected to it, you leave the jumper in place. And that will give you continuity across those two terminals. You can power 2 devices with a power supply. This contact here, I did actually call them to get the answer on the battery, and we'll go over that in a moment as well. I spoke to a very accommodating gentleman there. So that is our specifications. It's all laid out here in terms of what is what. Now, and as we look at the wiring diagram, this is going to match exactly what you already have in front of you. You know, when you look at it, it's just that the potentiometers that are here are not clearly, there's no indication as to what they are, except that if you're in the know, then you already know what they do. And the potentiometers will allow you to increase or decrease the amount of output that the motor will be receiving, so as to trim the installation, so to speak. If you notice you have a device that is not fully retracting, you may increase the potentiometer there. I called the manufacturer and asked for an official answer, and the next portion of this video is that conversation. So let's take a listen.
This call may be monitored and recorded for quality assurance.
What are the potentiometers for the power supply?
They increase the number of steps on the motor. So, like, it's for a slight adjustment because sometimes there's a little bit of mechanical difference in each device, and it allows you to increase or decrease the amount of steps the motors are taking.
Yeah, I understand. And that's just obviously going to be adjusted based on actual observation of the device. You'll certainly see if it needs to be increased.
Exactly. I mean, to be perfectly honest, probably 95% of them need no adjustment at all. But, you know, a few of them just need a little bit of adjustment just to pull the bar in a little bit further.
Yeah, the lack of explanation on the installation instructions told me exactly what you just said. You'd probably never need to touch that, but should you need to touch it, here's why. So, all right, yeah. Cool. Thanks again. Have a good weekend.
Okay, you too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so now we know exactly what those potentiometers do. And as we said, so everything else that you're going to see here is going to be labeled. Your A is going to be your charging LED. I'm just having a problem locating A. Oh, there it is. A, B, and C as I look at the power supply, those are epically small. You better bring your big glasses for that one. Yeah, very, very tiny what's listed there. Your D and your E are the potentiometers to trim your motor control. Zone 1 and door 1 and door 2. F and G are your door activation LEDs. Here and here above your control. 5 and 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So they're just describing what's happening. And when we get to the wiring diagram, we'll see that quite clearly. So let's switch over to what we are calling the wiring diagram. The installation instructions will be a more fully formed and developed explanation of this. But let's dive. You know what we'll do? Yeah, let's skip this because all of this is in the installation instructions, except that they do really show an elegant way of wiring the batteries, again, in series. So your connector, your battery cable will have a red and black, positive and negative, okay? And there is that single wire that will go between the negative and positive terminals otherwise, okay? So there's really no way to get that wrong. And again, if you want to fail safe, meaning power goes out and your doors are not latched, you would omit those batteries, is the bottom line. By the same token, your input to the fire panel. If you remove that jumper and wire that back to the fire panel, you are certainly going to have doors unlatched when you have a fire alarm condition. So be mindful of that. Since we're already here, here is your incoming power, ground, your white and black wire, obviously line and your hot wire, your neutral wire, your line, ground, and neutral. This shows the common installation for 1 or 2 zone. They're literally identical. So your exit device wires are going to go to 1 and 2. You obviously have to have a switch. So every electric circuit's going to have 4 components. It's going to have a power supply. That's the NP1. It's going to have a load. That's the electric latch retraction exit device. It's going to have a switch, and that's going to be the switch that you will enter into the system. These are dry contacts, so be mindful not to send any voltage up that way. Number 4, you need a conductor, and that's what all the wires are. So the NP1 provides you with the power. The device that you have is the load. The switch you provide, and then your conductors. You can also run an RX application, a request to exit application, which would be very handy if you were, well, you can use a request to exit scenario. Probably the most common might be you want to be able to tell a automatic door opener to understand that it's working within this entire system. So you could easily wire this in such a way that your automatic door opener is going to be able to communicate with the system. So what the point is when someone hits the exit device, the RX up to the, when someone hits the exit device, the RX up to your automatic door operator will tell the automatic door operator what's happening. You know, that's important. You may find another way to employ a RX switch. You might want to have the RX switch conducting an audit trail. You might be reporting back to access control. You might have a signal at a control station. You might have an annunciator or a light that goes on or changes state when the exit device is pushed. You can control that via the RX switch. Again, a dry contact. So when the exit device bar is depressed, either manually or electronically, the state of the RX will switch to closed from normally open for the duration of how long you hold that bar depressed. A very common application would be a dummy exit device and an electromagnetic door lock, where you hit the bar and then it will open the circuit to the mag lock, allowing egress. Okay, so they also touch on how to get power to the device. There's many, there's different ways to do it. A power transfer pivot, a power transfer pivot, a power transfer hinge. intermediate pivot, that can all be done. Power transfer, continuous hinges, of course, would be an option. An armored door loop may be an option if you're doing this after the fact. So there you go. So what we'll do now is let's switch over to the installation instructions, which are included with the hardware. And before we do that, I did speak to the manufacturer regarding the batteries. Let's take a listen to that.
This call may be monitored and recorded for quality assurance.
Well, thank you. May I ask you a question on the NP1 that you folks supply for Kawneer?
Sure.
Thank you. Simple question. On the two batteries, obviously wiring them in series will allow me to have accomplished my 24 volts.
Correct.
Would you please confirm that there is no additive property to the amp hour rating?
When you're saying additive property.
So when you're wiring them in series, 20 amp hour doesn't become 40. It stays at 20 when in series.
Yeah, it stays at 20.
Okay. I wanted to be sure. That's everything. Thank you for taking my call, and I appreciate you, sir. Thank you very much.
Sure, no problem. Have a good day.
Bye.
Okay, now, as we move into the installation instructions, they do talk about the system overview a little bit, which does explain to a certain extent why the SP1 or the prior SP1000X, it may have been called, prior power supply does not work with the motorized system. And it's because the NP1 is designed specifically for the MEL motor retraction system. That's because each device, the power supply and the exit device, has a computer that is constantly monitoring the status of the system. This communication is done using the red and black power wire that runs between the power supply and the motor retraction system on the exit device. These are your specifications that we've basically talked about on the prior document, and this is listed down below. We're going to talk about that enclosure size. I know that I have to show you that, and there was one other thing that I have to attempt to recall to show you. Mounting the power supply, running your power. That's, again, you're gonna be able to locate that right over here. Obviously, make sure that your incoming power is off. Do not power that naturally with the circuit live to the power supply. Never hot. Okay. Connect your incoming, obviously. Then you wire your device. Wire your exit devices per the diagram, connection 1 and 2. You know, that's really going to be a reference to getting over here to showing what we had looked at earlier about how to wire the two different door openings. Wire your device per the diagram. Note the polarity. When connecting wires, obviously this is low voltage, so there is polarity on your red and black wires. You have to connect, you know, positive to positive, negative to negative. The device will have 24 volt at all times, not only when the device is activated. So there's constantly power available at the device. The wires to the device must be a direct run and cannot be broken. That's because of the intelligent circuitry that's happening on either end. Wire your access control to connections 3 and 4, which is, you know, our switch. Our access control is our input or our switch, our keypad, our fob reader, our, you know, iris scanner, our thumbprint reader, whatever it is, a motion sensor. You know, it could be that as well. That would, or it could be a manual push button. That's out there as well. Well, actually, Yes, you could have a push button that has to be wired directly back to the power, incoming power for this. So I don't think you're going to run a manual push button to the access control at 3 and 4 by code. That needs to interrupt the power regardless, because if you interrupted that power, you've got batteries, your power supply is still working, so you have to utterly disconnect power to the unit with a push button if you had a sensor on the egress side. Your RX switch, we talked about that. That's connection 5 and 6. We won't go over that again. Your fire panel link is next to all of that right here. Okay, so that switch is normally open, and when you jumper it or you have your fire panel communicating to it, it will close it, but in an event it will normally open, cutting power, and the batteries will take over if they're present. So really simple and straightforward. Discussion on the battery connection is here, and you just wire them. You know, ignore everything I said previous about series and parallel. You don't have to know any of that. Just connect it the way that they show here. You know, the positive is going to be the positive. The negative is going to be the negative. And you have your quick connector to that battery connect there. Now they have a couple of alternate wiring applications here. 2 doors operate from a single input. Okay, each RX switch operating independently. You'll be able to control those 2 doors with a single keypad, let's say. 2 doors operate from a single input. Each RX switch behaves independent of each other. You might need something to happen in that regard, such as an automatic operator. Troubleshooting, I've never had anyone call me, well, although these devices, these power supplies are relatively new. If B is not lit, check the fuse, check your AC in. Again, those definitions for what those are was back in, I think this is called the wiring diagram. A, B, and C is charging, power, and battery. Charging, power, and battery. Power. D and E and F. I don't recall what those are. Right, of course. Door 1, rec switch, or request exit switch LED. Door 2, same. Door 1, F and G are door 1 and 2 activation. So if you are losing or something's happening on those LEDs, here's your troubleshooting area. That's everything. Nothing else to discuss about this power supply. Let's wrap up this video on camera. Okay, so a couple of things I remember. We do want to go over the size of the unit, and I'll put the door right back in. And so the door, and you'll know which side to put it on because the side with the hole in the panel will go where your LEDs are. Okay. Now, number one, they gave us some dimensions. The box itself is 10.5 by about 10 5/8, and then the depth with the lid is just heavy on 4 inch, about 4 1/8. Obviously, you have punch outs everywhere, literally on all 4 sides. There are no fasteners included, so you'll need some anchors. I spoke to Kawneer. They do not offer a cam lock for this. By the time you're seeing this video, there will be an option for a cam lock. We can certainly apply that here or send it separate. Doesn't matter. Maybe we'll install it, maybe we won't, but we know that it'll be correct. Also be an option for keys as well. You might need more than 1 or 2 keys, so we'll have that available there. want to think that there was one more thing to mention, but it has escaped me. Just to show you one more time, because I don't feel like it was covered, this battery connector, you have your positive and negative. This is literally going to plug in right here. That's it. Positive and negative, right how the wires are shown. So they're in the instructions. So there's literally nothing to be concerned with. Okay. So it's just quite frankly that simple. Okay. Comes right out. Potentiometers, and as you heard earlier, there's probably going to be no reason to touch any of that whatsoever. Okay. Nice quality item. I do regret that you are, as far as I can tell, there's no way around replacing your 1686 or 1786 solenoid device with a motor device. The problem that you have is your door is already prepped for an exit device. The door is literally made to take that exit device on that exit device alone. You know, one thought that I had, it would be awful nice if the manufacturer would offer a, you know, if you buy the device and the power supply, take X% off. They do not have any such program. But I can assure you that if you have a solenoid device, you can still get a power supply to run that solenoid device. It may not be a Kawneer device, a Kawneer power supply, but we can definitely supply you with an exit device for that. There may be a requirement of a power assist module that is done separately to make that work with a non-original power supply. But if you require a solenoid or a solenoid device, those are gone. A motorized device is the only path forward, and if you're switching from solenoid to motor, save the trouble, order the power supply immediately. I have literally had a client recently try to do it with a motor device and a actually this client we know because we're told a new motor device will not work with the old power supply. This client had a motor device, ordered the old power supply, it didn't work. He bought a power boost accessory that would normally work. That didn't work, and then sent me photographs of the device. You have a motorized device. The only thing we can do is sell you a motorized, the NP1 power supply. So I know absolutely firsthand that a motor device can't be powered with anything but a motor power supply. Anyway, the people at Kawneer are awfully helpful. There is a particular lady that works there that her job is not technical support at all. But she tolerates the occasional question from us because she's able to tap the shoulder of the right individual at the factory or in the shop. And to her, I say thank you very much. You know, we're just trying to, of course, service the installed client base and do it the best way that we can. So here we are. If you have any questions on the Kawneer, a nifty little black-looking power supply, or any other Kawneer product, please feel free to reach out to us. Below this video is a link to the manufacturer's page, and from there you can find all the Kawneer products that we sell, but you'll also find their parts manuals and their catalog. And the only trouble with Kawneer is you might stumble upon a 1686 concealed vertical rod exit device set of installation instructions, and they have a parts breakdown in the back there. None of those parts are in the service parts list. So occasionally, some of those parts, you know, the end cap, I've been able to buy the end cap mounting bracket. So sometimes some of those parts can be purchased, but I've not checked on all of them. So if you do find that you need a subcomponent, let us know. I did just half an hour ago have a client walk in who wants to cosmetically improve his otherwise perfectly healthy 1686 manual or mechanical exit devices. So we need the entire touch bar assembly, which is part 1. The end cap might be part 10. A couple of panels, parts 2 and 3 maybe. So we're going to reach out to the factory and find out if there are part numbers for those and then help the client with that so that he doesn't need to buy an entire new exit device, because what you don't need is the vertical rod controller assembly. So there you go. Any questions on this or any other Kawneer product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you.